I'm at a juncture, I'm at a 7.7 year cycle in my own life, because it was 7 years ago it was 7 years ago that I really saw the possibility of this process. It was 14 years ago that I really intended to enter the journey to uncover such a thing as a presence process procedure. So it's a 7 year cycle that I'm going on. So I've come to the end of that cycle now, and now it's into a different level of experience. So it seems that there are things that are coming up now for completion, that are showing themselves as being complete. And they'll come to me in dream state, or people suddenly connecting with me. I've been connecting with people in the last short period that are from 14 years ago or from 7 years ago, and I'm actually going to a place in Mexico where I was 7 years ago. 7 years ago today, I was sitting on a beach in Mexico, and that's where I saw the entire presence process procedure, like as a whole thing, complete. I call it then I called it a spiritual technology, and I still think of it as a technology. It's just we tend to think of technologies as things outside of us, but this is an internal technology. And I saw the whole thing complete, and the moment I saw it, I actually couldn't be at peace and relax in the place I was in Mexico, because I realized that in seeing that came a responsibility. That I'd gone through the journey to uncover all the pieces of it, and this useful technology, and it would be great just to do it with myself, but there seemed to be, I had set an intent that as I integrated my own emotional condition, that I would do it in such a way that I would leave a pathway for anyone who wanted to do that for themselves, right? And so that got me to leave the beach and set me on another whole mission, which is to develop the procedure, try it out on people, put into a book, start seeding the awareness of this work to the point that the work is running by itself. The book is available, people have access to everything, and then that's the point that I've reached now. So as I'm going through these completion points, it's having dreams and things that are also points showing that there are points of completion. Well, it showed up like instantly. I was driving along one day, I was working as a roadie, I was working with musicians, and I was in the middle of nowhere driving in a van, and I had this extreme attack of pain in the one side of my face, and then that continued to occur up to 8 times a day. The pain was about 40 minutes long. And so I began obviously trying to do something about it because it was painful. And so I first looked at all the physical aspects of my experience. I went to doctors, I tried to do something physical to it. And eventually I got treated by a neurosurgeon who basically told me his perception of what I had, which was a neurological disorder called Horton syndrome. And he basically said that because I'd had it, by the time I'd seen him, I'd already had it for a full 12 months. Normally most people have it for 3 months a year or 2 months a year. Because then people, you know what it does? It makes people think that this work is about symptoms. And then people try and come to it to try and fix symptoms, and it's actually not about that. I mean, that's what brought me, the pain brought me into the work. But way before the pain was gone, I realized the work wasn't about getting rid of pain, which is normally, what we'll do is we'll try and get rid of our pain, and then physically and then mentally we'll try and change our thinking. And eventually, if we go deep enough, we'll realize that there's an emotional disturbance in our field, or energy in motion disturbance, and then we'll start working with that. And when we start working with that, that'll awaken us to the realization that it's really important that we take responsibility for the quality of our experience. And the quality of our experience is largely about how we feel about things. And so the work is really about taking responsibility for our experience, not fixing our symptoms or trying to get to a place where we feel nothing and we're feeling no pain and we're feeling no discomfort. So if someone is driven into this work by symptomatic discomfort, they may be disappointed, because even when my pain went away, it came back after a year, because there was more for it to teach me. And the pain coming back didn't mean that my work was unsuccessful. It meant that there was a deeper level to go to. So the pain becomes a teacher, and one realizes that the discomfort coming into life is required. It's not there by accident. And so, if someone comes into this work, into the heart work, thinking it's about removing all discomfort, they'll become disillusioned. It's not about removing discomfort, it's about responding to it. Well, a victim and a victor is the same consciousness. A victim is really the lower energy center. The victor is the slightly higher kind of solar plexus energy center, and then the vehicle is in the heart, and then the void goes up. So, and in those relation to those, the victim is about complaint, the victor is about competition, the vehicle is about compassion, and the void is about completion. So it depends where we are on our journey. When we're in the victor-victim state, we're not aware of our emotional condition. We're not aware of the role emotions, our emotional condition plays in the quality of our experience. And because of that, we're not aware of the causal point of our experience. When I'm not aware of the causal point of my experience, I perceive the causal point to be outside of myself. And so therefore I perceive the world to be happening to me as opposed to through me. And so it actually is great benefit to many on this planet that I perceive the world happening to me. It's very useful. So when I play the victor-victim role, I call that energy, the energy that enjoys us perceiving the world happening to us, is the energy of the snake. And it has two heads, right? And what the one head is like Democrat, the other one is Republican. The other head is Islam, the other one is Christian. The one head is communist, the other is capitalist. And the one head says, that's the snake there. Help us fight the snake, right? And as soon as you take a side or run from a side, in other words, victim or victor, actually working with the energy of the snake. So the way to overcome that scenario that keeps going on is only when I take responsibility for my experience and I stop looking for what I want from others, and I start being able to give that to myself, then there are no sides left. Then one rises above running from something or trying to overcome something or attacking something. And only then do we rise up above victor-victim mentality and start to see the world from a different perspective. But if one sinks back down into those lower centers, one will perceive there are things against us, and it really looks like that. So if people are kept in fear or anger and grief, and those conditions are kept suppressed in them so they don't resolve them, but instead those things are kind of constantly triggered, that causes us to stay in a victim-victim mentality, where I'm afraid of something, I'm angry about something, I'm heartbroken about something, and those somethings are outside of me. And so I can either hide from them or attack them. And that benefits, it benefits the mentality of what I call the snake mentality, the serpent, the fear mentality, right? But the snake energy itself can be brought up. We see in the Egyptian art, the snake is over here, right? It's over here. So that energy can be brought up to a higher level. That energy can be ascended, and that requires going into the vehicle, into the void, or into the compassion, into the completion phase. So it's all, it's all different levels of our journey. So anger. Anger is a very powerful resistance going on in the emotional body. And when there's resistance in the emotional body, it creates friction, and that creates heat. And when we don't have an emotional body awareness, or we lack felt perception, we don't realize that this friction is going on within us, and it comes out as our thinking patterns, and we see it in our stories, and it's reflected in the world. And so we act out on the world, and when we're unable to accomplish anything by acting out in the world, eventually we kind of we go into a state of paralysis, and that's called depression. So that's when the anger is deeply pushed down. I'm unable to do anything about it, and I go into a state of depression, or I go into a state of aggression, right? Constantly projecting it on the world and accomplishing nothing. But anger is very powerful because the friction is very useful. When anger is worked with consciously, it's assertion. It gives me an ability to assert myself in the world. Because the friction, when wheels are on a rail, like for a train needs friction for the wheels to grip the rail. Also, you need friction to apply the brakes to stop the movement. So when we're living in a state of anger, we're living in a state of having the brakes applied. The brakes are being applied all the time. And for anyone who wants to know where their anger is, they just have to look around in their life, because we hide our anger from ourselves. So the best way to see one's anger is, where in my life is there no movement? Where in my life am I stuck? Am I stuck in relationship? Am I stuck in abundance? Am I stuck in creativity? Where is there no movement? It's stagnating. And that is an external manifestation of the internal condition of anger that I have. The moment I go in and I'm with the anger and allow the anger to be there, which is very challenging, because we're indoctrinated to completely have nothing to do with anger. There's no, we're given no opportunity to express that energy at all. It's kind of not allowed. And so when I allow myself to start feeling my own anger, I'll feel guilty about it, I'll feel bad about it. But the thing about it is to feel the anger without going into the stories, because anger tells the best stories ever, and not going into the behavior out of those stories. If I can feel that anger and be with it without condition, that energy that's in resistance will start to move again, and it will move to a point of resolution. It'll actually move into what's really beneath it, which is grief. And once I move into and through that grief, those places around me that have been stagnating will automatically start to go into movement. I mean, that's what the alchemy is. And so if we're kept angry, we're kept stuck. Only when we turn into our own anger and be with it without condition and allow it to move to a point of completion, is that movement come into our life, and we're able to assert ourselves without being aggressive. It's like being able to move myself consciously through this experience. There's 3 stories people can tell. So I can use this illustration of my own life to show how we can tell different stories. And there's 3 stories that are open to us that we can tell. I'm sure there's more, but I've only discovered 3. The first is the bad story, the terrible things that happen to us. And then when we do the work of integrating those emotional impacts, then we can tell the good story, right? And so, for example, the bad story for me was between the ages of 4 and 5, my father commits suicide. And not only did I lose my father, but my mother was so impacted by the event that I lost my mother too. So on the same day, I lost my father and my mother. And only in hindsight of doing this work did I realize what impact this had on me. First of all, no one really told me that my father was dead. I don't think you're able to tell a 4-year-old or even explain to a 4-year-old what that is. He was just not there anymore. He'd gone away. And so I can see now when I look back in my life that the bad story is that I developed immense amounts of rage about that. Fear, anger and grief coming out of that event. Fear, anger and grief about not only losing my father, but also about my mother becoming emotionally afraid to be available because she'd had her heart trashed by this event, right? And so those emotional signatures followed me through my life, and that's what came out as this Horton syndrome, this immense neurological pain that I had. Whenever those emotional conditions came up, it was like my body got overloaded by energy, and it would blow a fuse by this immense pain that I went through. It would kind of cause me to blank out from pain. It was like a building blowing a fuse. So that pain was terrible. I had that for years. That's my bad story, right? Once I went in and I worked with that pain, and I got beneath it, and I found the signatures of fear, anger and grief, and especially an immense amounts of rage, right? And integrated that, I realized how beautiful the setup was. So my father dies, right? He commits suicide and he's gone, right? And psychologically what I did was I started to look for my father. And so I went out into the world looking for my father. And what that journey unfolded into was actually finding my real father, which is the vibrational, discovering my true inner guidance, and having a very real connection with what God is for me. So I don't have like a massive connection with what God is, but I have a real one, right? And that's what counts to me. And so that came out of my father's death. I can see how looking for him led me to finding my real father. And then out of my mother, I realized after that event, I could see on some level, I realized there was something wrong with my mother. Something had happened to her. And I wanted to fix my mother's heart. My mother's heart was broken. And so I went out into the world trying to find a way to do that. And that brought me into the presence process. And actually I realized one day that I'd created, as a child, I'd created the presence process to fix my mother, right? So I got all that and I integrated all that. And so now, if I look at my life, that's the good story. The good story is that out of this, I managed to find a real connection with what God is for me. And I managed to bring something into the world that is very useful for people with broken hearts, right? So that becomes the good story. So in that I look at my childhood experience, and when we're in the bad story, we wish our childhood hadn't happened. We think it shouldn't have happened. But when I look at the beauty of it, and I see the role that my mother and father have played in my life, and now in the lives of thousands of human beings who have done this work and benefited from it, I can see what it means that some die so that others may live, and that my father died so that I may live. Not only that I may live, but that many human beings may have a better quality of existence, right, in this world. And then some have broken hearts so that others can heal, right? And I can see how my mother's broken heart has healed many human beings on the planet of their broken hearts, because out of that came the presence process, right? And then when I took that presence process, when eventually my mother phoned up one day and said, I want to do this process, and I watched her go through the process, and she actually allowed me to facilitate her through it, and watched her heal up of all of that, and see how the thing that I went out into the world to find, I could actually eventually bring back and give to her. And then it released her of all of that. And I have no doubt that it's released my father of everything too, right, this work. So that's the beauty of it, is that, and then that releases me from the good and the bad story too. Because I'm no longer interested in the good or the bad story. And that's why I'm bringing this work to completion, because I realize the presence process was built out of my emotional signature. And it's very powerful for helping us with emotional signatures. But what happens beyond the emotional signature? What happens when we're moving through life and not driven by an unconscious charge of fear, anger, and grief? What is that experience about? That's what I talk about as being the free agent. And that's the third story, right? Which I call the legend. When the legend is we find ourselves on the edge of a ledge of a precipice, and we're terrified, and we don't know why we're there, and we blame everybody, and we're in victim mentality because I'm on this ledge and I shouldn't be here. That's the bad story. And then I'm able to stand up gradually on the ledge and find my balance and be able to stand at the edge of this precipice without fear, without anger, without grief. And I see how being on the ledge strengthened me and gave me courage and insight and all these things. That's my good story. But then I want to go to the end of the ledge, right? The ledge end. And my ledge end is when I leap off that ledge and fall into the arms of the universe and let it carry me in a state of surrender through all my experiences. And then begins a very magical journey that has no beginning and has no end. And that's kind of breaking beyond the destination consciousness, beyond the mortality consciousness, remembering that the legend only begins when I realize that I have no memory of not being alive, and I really get on a very deep level that only other people die. Right? And that's something that I can't deny. In my experience, only other people die. And I have no memory of not being alive. And so on that resonance, I enter my legend, right? Which is like Joseph Wood Campbell would probably call it our mythology, or our whatever. Walk into your mythology becomes alive, right? Whatever that is. And I truly believe that everyone is here to fulfill their legend, right? To get beyond, to first go through the bad, then the good. And the bad and the good story is what enables us to develop the capacity to contain the awareness required to leap off the ledge. Time travel. I'm very interested in time travel, my perception on time travel is that when we live in a physically transfixed state or in a very mental state, we really perceive time travel as something outside of ourselves, that I have to build this machine, to climb in this machine and move through time, and then I'm trying to figure out how that's possible and all that sort of thing. And for me, that's not what time travel is. Time travel is an internal experience, and it's also an experience of really non-interference. So in my experience, I saw that, for example, those experiences of childhood and the death of my father, how my mother was traumatized by that, how the events had imprinted an emotional signature into me, a resonance, and that resonance I was carrying in this moment. And that resonance was really coloring my entire experience, my entire perception. In fact, I'd created an entire perceptual matrix out of that resonance, right? So I was able to journey back to that place, and how I journey back there doesn't matter. Anyone can journey back to a place, because everything, the past isn't behind me, and the future is not in front of me. The past is inside of me. It's something inside of me. So I was able to journey back. I used, whether I used visualization or whatever. But for example, I was able to journey back to myself just before my father died, right? And go to myself in that moment and say to myself as a 4-year-old, listen, something really freaky is about to happen, right, to you. Your father's about to die, and it's going to freak everybody out. And I know that one of the things about this experience is it's going to be so horrible for you, you're going to feel like you're going to die. It's going to be so traumatic for you. So I'm here to tell you that you didn't die, because I'm now, say I was doing it when I was 40 years old or 40, I'm now 41, and I'm actually having a cool life. I've been traveling through America, I've been with Native Americans and teepees. I've been doing all this weird stuff. So you've got a really interesting life ahead of you. So you're not going to die. So I've just come back to tell you that I'm going to sit with you while you go through this experience. Because we don't want to change this experience. We just want to change the way it impacts us. And so I just want you to chill out and be with what's going on and just allow things to unfold. And I will sit with you through it, because there's no one around you who has the capacity to be with you through this. Everyone is going to be freaked out. But I have that capacity. And so what I would do is I would sit with myself as I went through that experience and be there with myself. And what happened, because I was there with myself through the experience, the resonance of fear, anger, and grief was minimalized almost to nothing, right? That part of myself could become an observer of it like I was. And because that emotional imprint was then removed, because as I sat through the experience, I would re-experience it with myself. I would take the impact of that in myself. And from my perspective, not from the child's perspective. And being able to be with that fear, anger, and grief as it came up enabled me to not resist it, but let it move on. In other words, nothing got stuck there. And what I realized was, when I came back from that experience of being with myself, that all the trauma that was affecting me in the moment from that event was no longer here. Not only that, but my life was different, right? So I could see how that affected my family, how it affected my relationship with people around me. It was almost like I was now living on a different timeline, right? The timeline in which I was in a family in which people were traumatized by this event, the more I did that work, the less that appeared to be on this timeline. So every time I went back there and I actually went through the experience again with myself, and I was able to be with it without condition, just allow it to unfold and consciously receive the impact of those experiences. Allow the fear, anger, and grief to come up, but not stop them, just allow them to move through me this time. Every time I came back, it was like I was on a different timeline, a timeline that didn't have the impact of those events. So I never changed any events, but I changed this moment, right? And so then I became aware, now as I become more aware, develop my felt perception, I become more aware at times when things are kind of weird in this situation, that it's almost as if there's someone sitting with me at certain points of this experience, right? And saying to me, listen, Michael, I know you're like 46 now. Now this world this world that you're in is about to go through some really freaky events, right? I want you to chill out, right? Because however you respond to what's going on around you is affecting me. And I want to tell you that I lived, because I'm whatever age, say 70 or 80 years old, and I'm having a great time. And I want to tell you that no matter how it looks in this world, no matter how terrible things may appear, you lived, right? And you went on to do some great things. So I'm going to sit with you as you go through these experiences. And I just want you to chill out. I want you to be with this world as it's going through its shifts without condition. Just be with it so that you don't create any resistance that impacts me up ahead on the road, right? And for me, that's what the time travel really is, the capacity to go back into my experiences, to absorb the resonances that I initially resisted, so that there's no impact in this moment. And it really illustrates in a way what that saying is, I go ahead to prepare a place for you. So I came to this place where I am now, in my experience, right? And I have a safe place here. And so I can reach back to my 4-year-old and bring it here and say, listen, you come here. This is a cool place. I'm going back and I'm pulling you out of that place. I'm your parent now, right? And I'll take care of you. I'll be with you without condition. I will love you just as you are. I won't lay any trips on you. I'm the only one that can do that. And so wherever I go now, I have like this whole troop, like my 7-year-old and my 14-year-old who wants to play guitar, and all these people, from my past, all these aspects of my past I bring into the moment. And the more of them I bring here to where I am, the more present I become, and the more multidimensional my experience. So when I would go and do presentations, my ability to play around and play the fool in presentations, that's my child self who's with me in that moment, right? And for me, that's what the time travel is really about, right? And so I'm still open to exploring that even more. So it's not about changing events or interfering with anything in any way. It's about going and removing the charge of experiences that are impacting this moment from the past. And where anyone is able to do that, anybody. Pretty much, I just close my eyes and I go internal and I take myself back there as powerfully as I can to that moment, and be in that moment and be with that part of myself and make an emotional connection with that part of myself. The most important thing is to make an emotional connection, because the felt perception, there's no limit on time and space on the felt perception. There's a limit on the physical aspect of my experience, but there's no limit in the felt perception. So one of the ways that I make that connection with myself is by telling it that I lived, that I am it coming back from its future, and that I lived and that we're okay. Because our greatest fear is that we're going to die. Whatever we're going through is going to destroy us, right? That's our greatest fear. And so when I go back and I say, listen, Michael, you lived. You're going to be okay. In fact, I'm watching over you. I'll take care of you. That creates a connection, a heart connection with that. And once that heart connection is created, I'm energetically connected with that moment. And then I can, because I'm energetically connected with that moment, I can feel what that part of myself is going through in that moment. And I take on that now, because I know how to be with those resonances now. That part of me didn't know. It was just being smacked over by these felt impressions, right, of the fear, anger, and grief going on around myself at that time. I had no clue what to do. There was no one to take care of me or to comfort me. I was being blasted by it like everybody else. But now I can go back and take care of myself and parent myself at that time and be with myself through it. And actually, I'm going to absorb that now. I'm going to absorb the fear, anger, and grief, because I know how to integrate it. That part of myself doesn't. And because I integrate it, the impact it had on me as a 4-year-old is not there anymore, and therefore the impact it has on me now is not here, because it ripples all along the timeline. And now is different because then is different. That this is the time machine. And for most of us, it takes us 70 or 80 years to get nowhere. Right? We don't even switch it on. I perceive time not as linear. I think the mental body perceives the time as linear, and the way that I relate to time more is like a drop falling in a 3-dimensional pond. So it sends ripples off in all directions, and so if we pay attention, we can feel the ripples coming towards us of an event that is going to happen in the future. And if we pay attention, we can start to take notes of ripples. For example, if people are paying attention in the US or anywhere in the world, we can see that there's a massive economic occurrence coming, something really massive, and we can already see the ripples of it coming towards us in problems with banks, fuel prices going up, people on the airlines being laid off, Starbucks shutting down 600 stores. And if people watch, they can see that these are ripples, not of something that happened, that something that's about to happen. And so if we can pay attention, we can feel events coming towards us by the ripples that they send out. A lot of the teachings that come to us are in a vocabulary that is so out of date according to where we are now. So it's about reframing things. The whole thing about any teaching is to stop having it be something outside of ourselves. And while it's in a religious ceremony or in a church or in a book or someone else, someone in the priesthood telling me, being the authority, then it's outside of myself. And while it's outside of myself, I can't see what it is. And so, for example, Jesus was a profound teacher, but there's the teachings about Jesus and there's the teachings of Jesus. And the teachings about Jesus are what's coming to us from the outside. The interpretation of others, the manipulation of that by others for ends that are not serving us, right? Self-serving ends. But then there's the teachings of Jesus. Now the teachings of Jesus only reveal themselves when I take my experience to be my truth, right? So the moment someone says to me, your experience should be different than the way it is, you should be having another experience. In fact, you're a sinner. You're a bad person. You need to apologize for yourself. You need to apologize to me, and if you listen to what I tell you, then I'm going to make it right for you. And one day, not now, but one day, you can go to heaven, right? To me, that's blasphemy. Blasphemy is when I deny the experience being given to me by whatever God is in the moment, right? So when I overcome that and I start to realize that my life experience is the gift given to me through which I awaken to vibrational awareness, and I take my experience to be true, and I enter my experience and I try things out and I see the consequences, and I allow the consequences to teach me what is appropriate, what works, what expands me and what contracts me, and I take that as my teacher. Then when I look at someone like Jesus, I'm going to see it in a completely different light, right? I'm going to see the teachings of Jesus as opposed to the teachings about Jesus. For example, when I went into my own experience and I saw that in the first 7 years of my life, I'm emotionally imprinted. That emotional imprint has such an impact on my perceptual matrix that I perceive the world happening to me, and then I try and change the world to be at peace, and that behavior just takes me around and round in circles, causes me to wander in the wilderness, because I'm always looking at the effect, not the cause, and so therefore my behavior is ineffectual. Then I'm living in the boredom, right? And I realize that the perceptual matrix that I have through the imprint of my childhood causes me to enter the boredom. A person like Jesus says, unless you become as a child again, you cannot enter the kingdom, right? And as I go into my childhood experience and I integrate those emotional signatures, and my perceptual matrix transforms, and what's keeping me out of the moment is releases, and so I enter more and more into the moment, and I start to realize, well, I am in the kingdom. And he also said the kingdom is now at hand, right? It's now at hand. It's like saying the kingdom is in the now, right? So by going through that experience in myself, when I look at the life of Jesus, I realize what a virgin birth is, right? And a virgin birth is no longer this experience in which someone gets pregnant without a man and all this sort of stuff, this magical story. Actually, I realize a virgin birth is when two people come together. They work on their own emotional imprint. They clean their own emotional bodies. They integrate their own fear, anger, and grief. And once they accomplish that, they come together and they have a child. And so they don't imprint that child with any emotional garbage or any dysfunctional emotional patterns. And that child has what's called a virgin birth. Their emotional body is open and the vibration is able to pour through as it is without conditions placed upon it. It also tells me why Jesus was born in a stable, if that was the case, rather than being born in the inn. It's a metaphor. In other words, the birth of this child, if you want a child to have a virgin birth, you don't want it to be around people that are living unconsciously, the people drinking in the inn and all that. You don't want it around that unconscious behavior. You would rather have that child exposed to conscious beings, right? And in the stable, what did they have? Animals, the sheep, the donkey. And the nature of the fact is that that sheep and donkeys and those sorts of creatures are way more present than most human beings, right? They don't have the emotional imprinting. And so when they're around that child, the resonance coming off them is one of presence. It's not one of fear, anger, and grief. And so by having the child born away is actually to make sure that the child is not being imprinted by the unconsciousness of others. I can only see all that to be so if I go into my own experience and see what emotional imprinting, what impact that has on my life and what the consequences are. You know, going into my childhood and resolving those things enables me to re-enter the kingdom. Unless I become as a child again, I cannot enter the kingdom. So all the teachings of Jesus are no different to the teachings that we're being exposed to through the emotional body. It's just that while felt perception is closed down, while we don't have emotional body awareness, we tend to look at the teachings from the outside as to from the inside. And one of Jesus' greatest teachings has also been misinterpreted. For me, it's a complete misinterpretation, which is, I am the light, I am the way, none come to the Father through me, right? And when I look at that teaching and I look at my own life experience and what my experience is showing me, that what he was really trying to transmit was that I am is the light, I am is the way. None enter the vibrational but through an awareness of the I am. And the I am in my life is expressed by my life experience. My life experience is an expression of the I am, right? And so when I go into my own experience, I'm going to become aware of what the I am is. And so therefore another way of communicating that would be to say, my experience is the light. My experience is the way. I cannot enter vibrational awareness while I'm in the world, to be in the world but not of it, unless I take my experience to be true and allow that to teach me. My experience will show me how to develop the capacity to become fully aware of what God is, of what I am. And it's the same for your experience. Your experience is the light. Your experience is the way. Unless you embrace your experience as the truth, you're not going to enter vibrational awareness. So it wasn't about you got to be exactly like Jesus, do what Jesus did. No, Jesus was saying, accept your experience as your truth, right? And once you accept that as your truth, that truth will set you free. It'll bring you back into immortality awareness. Even though you're wandering through a very mortal world, you can contain immortality awareness while we're in it. And that's raising ourselves from the dead. Because while we live in a time-based paradigm, while I'm letting the past be a barometer by which I navigate myself into some future and I ignore the moment, I'm just like a ghost, right? And so I'm dead to the moment. So the more I arrive in the moment, the more I come alive. I raise myself from the dead. Because in the work that I've been looking at is obviously our fear, anger, and grief that's imprinted into us in childhood. And out of that fear, anger, and grief, we actually create structures out of that, right? So we create relationships that coming out of our fear, anger, and grief, we create entire lives out of that. And once we realize that, or what causes us to realize that, is when we go in and we start to integrate those conditions, and then we realize there's, the relationship I'm in is not serving me anymore because it actually was made out of my neediness, and the kind of work that I'm doing doesn't serve me anymore because I was actually just doing this work because I wanted approval, or I wanted to prove something, and I'm not in the world to try and prove something. It doesn't bring me joy. And so what I realize is that I'm in all these boxes, and I want to sort of start climbing out of the box, right? And we have political boxes, commercial boxes, religious boxes, and so there's a lot of box going on. Each time we climb out of a box, it's like taking a leap into the unknown, because the boxes keep everything familiar and in place and comfortable. And so different people are prepared to take different leaps, right? For some people, they'll take a leap and they'll get to that place and they'll go, that's good enough for me. I'm happy in this box, right? It's not as small as the one I used to be in, but it's a So for me, the journey is, completely to keep recognizing the box, and it gets bigger and bigger, because eventually you realize, well, if I'm a Christian, then my box is Christianity. I mean, that's how big it is, right? Even the thing that I believe to be the truth can be my box, right? And so the analogy that I like for that is about the Himalayas, right? That some of us are happy to have the Himalayas in a coffee table book on the coffee table. And we're happy to, people come in and we show them the coffee table book, look at the Himalayas, and we find it interesting and beautiful, and close the book and we carry on with our lives, and that's that. There are other people that have a photograph of the Himalayas on the fridge that got sent to them by a friend who actually went to India and took a photograph of the Himalayas. And that's more exciting than the coffee table book. This kind of more real, right? And there's less people who have that photograph. And for some people, having the photograph is enough, right? And then there are some people that will go to India and stand 60 miles from the Himalayas and look through a pair of binoculars and go, wow, they're the Himalayas. Wow, they're beautiful. Check it out, check it out. And then go home, and that's enough. We saw the Himalayas right over there, right? And there's less of those people. And some people are happy to go right to the base of the Himalayas and look up and say, wow, what an awesome mountain, beautiful, take a photograph, send it home to a friend so they can put it on their fridge, and that's enough, right? And then they go home. And then there are even less people that will climb maybe up to base camp, like, a few thousand feet up the Himalayas, and camp there for a couple of days, and wow, we're on the Himalayas, we made it to the Himalayas, and enjoy that time for a while, and then go back down to base camp and then go home. There are even less of those people, and there are even less who want to summit. And the thing is, the closer we move towards the summit of the Himalayas, the less people there are going to be around us. And as we approach the summit, often we'll have a guide that will take us towards the summit. But if we have an authentic guide, even the guide will eventually fall back and say, this part of the journey you have to go on your own. And when we arrive at the summit, we will realize that we're actually all alone, right? And so that journey towards the summit, one of the rites of passage is entering the loneliness, what we think of as loneliness or being alone. When one becomes a free agent in the world, there are no groups to belong to, there are no people to hang on to, there is no culture to clutch to, there is no religion to clutch to, there is no political organization to align with. All those boxes have been opened and seen for what they are, and one really realizes one's this immortal being traveling through the cosmos as a free agent. But then one also becomes available, and in that availability, because there's no holding on to or manipulating or needing, in that availability one becomes really useful and is able to have powerfully intimate experiences with every aspect of the creation. So that's the loneliness, or having less and less people around us, because as we open each box, really what the box is our drama. The drama coming out of our emotional signatures. So as we resolve the emotional signature, there's less drama. And many of us communicate through drama. So the less I communicate with drama, the less I'm attracting towards me people in drama. And as we remove all the drama out of our states, then we're really only bumping into those who are not communicating through drama, and there's less and less and less people around. But more quality experiences. So there was a saying, that was said to me when I was young by one of my parents. Came that you can count, if you really have a good life, you'll be able to count friends on your one hand. Like if you have a trashy life, you'll have a lot of friends. But actually, they'll just be be people all around you. But actually, when you're really traveling and you bump into the free agents, you can count them on your hand, right? You can count them on your one hand. Stop trying to avoid life. It's the dance around the void. It's called avoidance. Everything we resist is the dance around the void, right? The avoidance. I don't have a problem with money, I just don't want to work for money. I don't want money to be my God. That's all. I don't have an issue with money. Money is an energy. It's the energy of movement, right? It enables me to do all sorts of accomplish movement and gives me time and space to do things. But I don't want to work for money. I don't want money to be my boss. I don't want my life to be about making money. I think there's nothing more pitiful than seeing a human being whose life is based on making money. That money has become their God. And they measure themselves and their success and everything by how much money they have and how much they can make. And then the life experience becomes a means to manipulate everything that's going around me so I can suck money out of it. I think that's just the saddest state to be in. There's nothing, I mean, really. So, but money is there, it's a fuel, it's an energy, and it's a flow of the universe. And I believe in a healthy energy exchange. But I don't do anything that I do for money. I do it because it brings me joy, because I'm curious about it, because it enhances my life, because in a way it may add something to others, although even though that's not a big priority. If what I do serves others in some way, that's like a fringe benefit, right? But my life is about evolving, exploring, all of that stuff. I don't believe in do what you love and then the money's going to, like it's an agreement that you make. If I do what I love, then I'm going to make money. No. The money is there if it's required. If it's not required, it's not there. Still manipulating what you want so that money will come, If you go like, I'm going to do what I love so that the money will follow. The abundance will be there if it's required. If it's not required, it's not there. In my insight into the way we are, manipulation is the causal point of all our suffering. Right? And our suffering comes out of a two-fisted punch. First of all, there's the emotional imprint that we receive during childhood, in the first 7 years of our life. And this emotional imprint, these felt experiences that impact us during childhood, we resist them. And because they're uncomfortable, so we resist them. And these resistances determine the way our energy pathways run. And also, living in a state of this internal resistance causes great discomfort, although we're not aware of it because our emotional body awareness shuts down. By the time we're adults, we're living in an experience in which we're constantly doing this two-fisted punch. And the one punch is to sedate and control the discomfort within me. So I don't want to feel my fear, anger, and grief. The other punch is to manipulate my experience in some way to provide a feeling I would rather be having than the one I'm having. So it's kind of the mental body is saying my experience is not valid. The experience I'm having shouldn't be, what's happening in my emotional body should not be happening. This fear, anger, and grief mustn't be there. Push it out of my awareness. I would rather be having another experience. So I will manipulate this physical experience that I'm having to supply another feeling that I would rather be having. And that is the cause of all our suffering, because that behavior is destructive. When I invalidate my experience and I manipulate the world around me to have an experience I would rather be having, I'm going to cause suffering to myself and I'm going to cause suffering to people around me, because they just become the object of my manipulation. So manipulation, one of the analogies that we can use, like I like the word manipulation, and I look at it this way. Like a little boy is born, right? And the first thing that happens to the little boy is a nipple is stuck in his face. And all the life force is coming from the nipple. And then after a while, the nipple is taken away and hidden away forever. And then that boy grows up to a man who spends the rest of his life trying to get the nipple back, right? Searching for the nipple. And that's man, nipple, nation, manipulation, right? And really that's how we're being with ourselves, except this world has become our nipple, right? We see the physical world, our physical experience, and even our mental experience as our nipple. And we think we can get the juice of life to sustain us from this world and from the mental body, from doing physical things, doing physical practices, eating physical things, and from mentally understanding. We try and get all our juice from that. And that creates an experience of suffering, because there's other forms of sustenance that are available. There's other food. So there's food for the physical, which is for my physical vehicle, which is, good healthy food and physical exercise. There's food for my mental, which is, thoughts and images and things that are inspiring to me, and entertainment and all of this sort of stuff. But there's also my emotional food, which is my fear, anger. It comes to me in the form of my fear, anger, and grief. That fear, anger, and grief is deliberate. And when I use the word deliberate, it contains the word liberate. That fear, anger, and grief implanted in me at childhood is there. It's a type of nutrition. When I digest it, and the process of digestion is bringing it into my awareness, allowing it to surface. Don't sedate and control it anymore. Allow that to come into my surface, to come into my awareness, and then be with that without condition. That allows me to digest it, to accept the experience I'm having as valid, to stop trying to enforce another experience, right? When I digest my emotional nutrition, I stop the process of manipulation. And that emotional nutrition, by feeling my fear, anger, and grief, enables me to awaken my feeling capacity, my felt perception, which enables me to perceive the vibrational, and then to be able to receive my vibrational food, which are vibrations that are coming into us every day. And if we can be with those vibrations and digest those, then I'm getting my vibrational food, my emotional food, my mental food, and my physical food. I'm getting my 4-course meal, right? And when I'm getting my full 4-course meal, I'm less likely to manipulate the world around me to try and get sustenance from a place I can't get it from, right? So I'm less likely to go to try and get everything out of the mental and physical experience and manipulate those parts of my experience to get feelings and understandings that are only possible from the vibrational, the emotional. And that manipulation, the key to ending that manipulation is the validation of my experience. To say, the experience I'm having is valid. It's maybe not what I want. What I want is driven by my discomfort. What I want is to feel better, right? But actually what's required for me to evolve is not to feel better, but to get better at feeling, right? And that the keys to that, the nutrition to that, is in my emotional content. My fear, anger, and grief is the key to the kingdom. And when I accept them as valid, when I say, oh, this experience I'm having that is upsetting to me is actually valid, it's not that it's not supposed to be happening. It's trying to bring to my awareness an internal condition that has been suppressed out of my awareness. Let me allow it to be there. Let me be with it without condition. Let it move to its point of resolution. And as I go through that experience and digest it, I will receive the nutrition, right? There's an immense amount of nutrition available from the emotional body. The main nutrition being developing the capacity through felt perception to perceive the vibrational, right? And once I perceive the vibrational as the true causal point, then it's less likely that I'm going to try and use this world as a nipple, right? Because God's nipple is the vibrational, and that's the nipple I want to go to, right? Okay, there's a king, and he has a servant who's always with him. So his servant becomes his best friend. And one day they go out hunting, and the servant's job is to load the muskets with gunpowder. And they're chatting away, so the servant is not really paying attention. So, I have to add a detail here. I'm going to try and remember the story. The one reason the king really likes the servant is because no matter what happens, the servant always says, it's all good, it's all good. And the king thinks that's really cute about the servant. So they're out hunting and they're chatting away and enjoying each other's company, and the servant puts too much gunpowder in the musket. And as the king shoots, it blasts his thumb off. And so the king is traumatized and freaked out, and the servant says, don't worry, it's all good, it's all good. And the king says, no, it's not all good. You can't just shoot the king, blow the king's thumb off. You know, I know you're my friend and I like you, but in the kingdom, if people just start blowing the king's thumb off and getting away with it and saying it's all good, we're going to have problems. So you're going to have to go before the court of law and they'll decide what the outcome is. And the servant says, that's okay, it's all good, it's all good. So it's decided that he's going to be in prison for 6 years for blowing off the king's thumb. And the king is a bit sad about it, but he knows that the law of the kingdom must be enforced. So after about 6 months or so, the king gets curious about what's outside of his kingdom. So he takes a group of people with him and he goes exploring beyond the realm that he knows. And he enters a territory and he doesn't realize that this is the territory of cannibals. And he and his entire group get captured. And the cannibals are so excited because now they have this whole banquet thing going on. So what they do for hors d'oeuvres is they slowly lower the individuals into boiling pots. The screaming is part of like the appetizer and all that. And as they're lowering the king into the cauldron, they notice he's got a missing thumb. And so they say, hang on a minute, stop, we only eat organic food, we only eat whole food. And you've got a missing thumb, you're not like whole food. So they set the king free, they tell him to go away. So he runs off naked into the jungle. Eventually finds his way back to his kingdom, and on the way back he's had time to think about this. And he realizes his friend actually saved his life. So he goes to the judges and he says, listen, I'm going to release my friend, my servant, and give him back his job, because actually he saved my life. And he goes down to the prison cell and he goes to see his friend, and his friend's very excited to see him. He says, hi king, how's it going? He says, I had a really rough time, and I was nearly killed by cannibals, and the reason they didn't eat me was because my thumb was blown off. So I feel really bad about you having been in prison now for over 6 months for this. And his servant says, no, it's all good, because if I hadn't have been here, I would have been with you. What makes this human experience real? What causes it to become real for us is when we validate the experience we're having. When we perceive what's unfolding as required. This is what's required. The one way to know what's required is that it happens.